want this to be, um, see, the moment I start speaking, my image of who the person might be consuming this media, consuming this particular video sort of pops into mind, and as a result, how I'm speaking it gets sort of readjusted accordingly, which is fine, I guess, but it's also not fine because I don't really know who's going to be consuming this. I don't know who is it going to be, who is going to be watching this at all. And so all that's happening actually in my mind is that um, I imagine this person who is like watching this, who's sort of just sort of sitting there and like just like cynically observing what I'm doing. And as they're doing it, I have to sort of perform and act in a way which sort of makes sense and caters to how they're perceiving me. I don't know if that makes sense. Um, and as a result, obviously, as I speak, I become a bit self-conscious. Um, and it's kind of a hindrance in terms of how I communicate. It's a fascinating exercise just doing this though, because what's happening in this particular moment is I don't really have any clear indication of who it is that's actually watching me. It's just my own particular judgment, sort of out here. And as I communicate, that's the thing which is judging me. Now, that particular judgment may be coming from a series of different judgments which I've encountered before in my past. That might be true, but it's still, it's side of me because right now there's no one here except me. Uh, but that's interesting. It's interesting because I think sometimes in life I've sort of observed this. Yeah, I observed this even today. When it comes to me communicating or when it comes to someone else communicating in life, generally when we start speaking, this sort of critic pops into mind. And that critic is sort of outside of us as well. We can kind of tell based on the facial expressions of the people around us or based on the way they're responding to us, we can kind of tell that they may not be totally on board with what we're saying. But the fact that that self-critic is there, and if it's really, really strong, the moment when that sort of comes into being, the moment you start speaking and that thing comes into being, um, its existence heightens any kind of negative response which we may be receiving from outside. And so it becomes really difficult dealing with it because at one level, we feel that there's clear indication or evidence that those who are around us are not always responding positively to us. That's obvious because we're like, hey, look, this is what this person said in this particular moment, or this is how they looked in response to what I was saying. It's not just what they said, it's sort of how they looked and how they were sort of interacting with me in terms of their body language and so on and so forth. So you have that, and you have that in front of you, and then there's that critic, and that critic is like, see, I was right, and here is the evidence. But what I'm trying to say in this particular moment is, you are kind of right and you are kind of not, because what I've observed is that in my life, when that self-critic sort of quietens a bit and I communicate, um, I may receive the same response from that same person that day, but because that self-critic is a bit more silent, it's a bit more quieter, I can communicate far more comfortably, and my interaction with that person is far, far better and far, far richer as a result of that self-critic not being active in that moment than that self-critic being active in that moment. And that's sort of quite interesting to me because the whole point of the self-critic, at least where we stand or where it stands, I guess, is that it's there to help us sort of survive and navigate within the social world slightly better. That's the whole reason why it exists. It says, don't say that, don't do that, because if you say that or do that, you may be sort of outcasted or sort of pushed out of this particular tribe you may find yourself in. And that tribe could be the tribe in terms of your circle of friends. It could be, I mean, if that's the case, that's kind of awful because that means you're having to identify yourself even in front of your friends. So who is the person you can go to for sort of some kind of emotional support? But that may be present with your friends. You just don't know, you know. We have all sorts of different friends and different, we communicate with different people for different reasons. So it's possible that this dynamic may exist within a particular friendship circle of yours. It's possible it exists within a, definitely probably exists in front of like your relatives or maybe your parents or your siblings or people you communicate with at the office or at university or at school. You know, these groups we find ourselves in, and this critic pops up and it says, don't say that, don't do that, or say that and do that so that you're accepted. And that critic is there so that, well, it's essentially there as a survival mechanism, you know, it's there so that we can sort of navigate ourselves well within this environment. But what I'm trying to say here is, or what I've noticed in my life is that it's actually counterproductive. Many times it's counterproductive. Sometimes the things which it's saying are true. Sometimes it may be judging a particular set of social norms which you find yourself in, or it may be judging a particular context in which maybe if you say or do something, people may not respond to it accurately. But the critic sort of carries with it a kind of emotional heaviness, you know. So what you find is that it's not just a factual statement which your brain is telling you in that moment, which is don't say that or don't do that. It's not just simply a statement. That statement has a layer of fear beneath it and a layer of sort of panic almost beneath it, you know, and that in itself sort of makes us feel like a prisoner. At least it makes me feel like a prisoner at times, you know. So we're communicating with these people, we're in these environments, and we can't really seem to really express ourselves or be ourselves, you know. And if we can't express ourselves or be ourselves, then how can we actually help to connect with the people we're talking to, you know? And so it's in a way ironic that this thing exists within us, which is this critic, and it's there to actually help us, and many times actually ends up hindering things for us because we just sort of shut down or we wear a mask and we communicate through that mask, which is fine, I guess, in a way, because the critic says we're being practical, but actually we're not being authentic. And if we're not being authentic, then we're not really connecting with those people around us, you know. And I think a lot of our sort of fulfillment, just a very basic fulfillment and contentment in life arises from having the ability to connect with those who are around us on a day-to-day basis in an honest and sincere way, you know.